Back in 2012, I went to Las Vegas for a couple of weeks to blow off some steam, along with my severance package after I was laid off. It wasn't an absurd amount of money, but it was enough to have fun for a few days, which was all I wanted. I was staying at the casino hotel, and one morning I woke up with what I initially assumed was just another hangover. I felt nauseous and slightly dazed, and it took a couple of minutes for my legs and arms to regain their normal levels of sensation. It's almost as if my body had slept for a really long time. Didn't take long before I realized that I was missing a finger. My left index finger, to be more precise. I started freaking out and panicking as my vision gradually turned to black, threatening to make me pass out at any given second. But I didn't lose consciousness. But I still struggled as I looked all over the room for my missing finger. Something I was quick to notice was that there wasn't any blood at all. None that I could see, at least. Of course, it could have just been my drunken, drugged-up, panicked self that couldn't see or think straight, but the investigation confirmed it later on. No traces of blood were found, and the weapon or object responsible for the deed was also missing. It appeared to be a clean cut, and the wound had somehow been cauterized. To me, it looked like the finger had simply fallen off. Now, I know that this makes no sense at all, but that was my train of thought. I mean, if you woke up one day missing a finger, you'd certainly look around first, right? So that's what I did. I mean, it's a part of you, part of your body, something that's just not supposed to disappear like that. And I eventually called for help, and to say that it was a total shit show doesn't even come close. So many cops, casino security, and nosy patrons tried to understand what the hell was going on. And I didn't even know what to say, or even know what to think. I was missing a fucking finger, and I had no idea how or why that happened. The cops didn't seem to care all that much. One of them implied something along the lines of me borrowing money from a loan shark or the mob or something like that. Another one just said, "It's just a finger. You should be grateful." And I was disgusted beyond words. But before I got to defend myself from those accusations, everyone seemed to accept that it was just the truth. "When in Vegas," someone said. I still filled a ton of paperwork out, but it was worthless in the end. No clues came up, and I could still tell that it was pointless to bother them about it. It was fucking Vegas, after all. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. And my finger sure as hell stayed there for all I know. I threatened to sue the hotel, and the guys in charge ended up giving me some hush money. I guess having your patrons lose body parts without a good enough reason would be bad for business. Who would have thought? I think this goes without saying, but the whole ordeal and its aftermath fucking sucked. Of course, things are much different now in hindsight, with me not knowing at the time that it would become a regular thing. But even then, it was enough to nearly ruin my life. I know it was just one finger, but how do you come to terms with something like that? It's one thing to be involved in a freak accident or even a fight, but not only did I not know how I lost it, I also didn't even know why, or even who would want to do something like that to me. How do you even explain this to your friends and family? How do you even begin to wrap your head around something like that? Imagine waking up every single morning and being reminded almost instantly that a part of your body had gone missing. If you think that you could have easily moved past it, then good for you. You're a better, stronger person than I could ever hope to be. But in my case, it nearly destroyed me. I didn't leave my apartment for months. I couldn't think or function normally because the thought of my lost finger was always on my mind. I mean, it used to be attached to me and then it disappeared overnight, so it was only natural to be reminded of its absence constantly. Whenever I reached to grab something, whenever I used or looked at my hands, it would mess me up for the rest of the day. I hadn't become fully used to it yet. But thanks to therapy, I was on the verge of making peace with it and finally moving on with my life. And then I lost something else, exactly 1 year later. 2013. I woke up with a very familiar sensation, one that had plagued my nightmares as well as my sleep paralysis incidents for the past year. I felt sick and numb, my whole body struggling to move and to wake up, sensations slowly coming back to me, followed by pain. And I screamed for my life, as I had done hundreds of times right before waking up in a puddle of sweat. But it was no nightmare. My right ear had gone missing, in the exact same circumstances as my finger. No blood, no tools, nothing left behind. It didn't take long for me to realize that both incidents had happened on the exact same day of the exact same month. There was a pattern. There was, in all likelihood, a reason for this madness, and someone had to be behind it. And yet, absolutely nothing came from it once again. Absolutely nothing. That's what the cops had to work with. And I was left exactly the same as the year before, except now I was missing an ear as well. The cops suspected my then-girlfriend at the time. She was a nurse. I think you can guess under which circumstances we first met. But everything checked out. She had been working all night and dozens of hospital staff accounted for her, as did video surveillance. While she provided some emotional support at first, she bailed after a few days. And I couldn't blame her. Not only was there still no logical explanation to who, how, or why, but someone had managed to make their way into our home, hack a piece of me, and leave without seemingly breaking in or even leaving any evidence behind. That would just about scare anyone into moving away to another state, maybe even another country, which I actually attempted to do at some point. But more on that in a bit. And not only that, but this wasn't the first time that it had happened. And now all of the signs pointed to this becoming an annual event. And it sure did. 2014. Probably the hardest year that I had to live through, knowing that someone was actively trying to ruin my life by slowly amputating my body piece by piece. I invested a lot in security and would change the locks every other week. But I was never satisfied. It wasn't enough. I barely slept, knowing that each passing day brought me closer to that terrible date. But what if it didn't? What if they decided to come that very night, or the next, maybe next week, or 2 months later? They had done with me as they pleased twice on that exact same day of the year. And the message was clear. They could do what they wanted with me, whenever they wanted, and get away with it. It probably would be smart to just move to a different place, but my anxiety dictated most of my decisions. I nearly didn't talk to anyone that whole year. That, on top of my seclusion, didn't do me any good, although it did provide a bare-bones source of comfort. I lived in constant fear for the first 2/3 of 2014. I thought it would get a lot worse as the inevitable date drew closer. But the opposite happened. I became angrier, with a newfound bloodlust building up inside of me. Someone was doing this to me, and if they wanted to keep on doing it, they would have to come for me again. Only this time I would be ready. I would be expecting them. They couldn't possibly get away with it a third time, and more importantly, I just couldn't afford to lose anything else. I couldn't allow it, as I feared my mind and spirit would simply break apart. So I got myself a gun through some gangbangers and made sure that I knew how to use it when the time came. I was ready to take a life, and considering all that had happened to me, I knew that I could probably get away with it. In fact, if anyone had knocked on my door on that day, I would have probably unloaded a full clip through the door without even thinking twice. I just needed an excuse. The smallest hint of a threat, anything. I know I took some pills to make sure that I would remain awake and aware throughout the night, but my recollection of the evening just fizzles past a certain point. I thought that I had taken enough steps to guarantee that I'd make it to the next day in one piece, or rather, without losing any more pieces. But I was wrong. That year, they took my right hand. That's not all they did. the weapon I had bought for my protection. It was left on my desk completely disassembled, with every single part and component neatly, perfectly arranged like it was something straight out of a fucking manual. They had left a message, perhaps even a warning of things to come, the meaning of which I'm sure I don't have to explain to you at this stage. All I knew then was that this was far from over. Living as a shut-in had done me no good, so I had to radically change my approach if I hoped to change anything. I spent most of 2015 traveling the country, staying at motels and all kinds of sketchy places. I never knew where I was heading next, whether I got into a cab or hitched a ride, ditching my phone and made sure to never make reservations of any kind. That sort of thing, not leaving a trail behind and just getting off the grid, or at least trying to. Figuring that might be enough to lose whoever was after me, even though I had no idea what kind of resources they had available on them. And for a while, I think that I felt confident about it. I believed that I could survive the year without losing any more pieces of me. But as the dreaded date loomed closer, doubts and anxiety found a way to cripple me all over again. In doing so, it gave way for all that mental and physical fatigue to set in, accumulated from nearly a whole year's worth of traveling around. What if everything I had done wasn't enough? Or what if it had all been pointless to begin with? There was less than a week left at that point. And that's when I decided to do something very stupid that probably undid all of the work that I had done so far. I bought a laptop and I used the dark web to hire someone to protect me. They took my money, but they never showed up. And I lost my tongue that year. I didn't do much of anything in 2016. I moved into a new apartment every couple of months or so, but more out of a necessity than anything else. There was no point for me to move around as I had done the year before, considering how it turned out in the end. Instead, I tried to live my best life and as normal as possible, despite everything that I had lost and with my speech now severely impaired as well. I kept mostly to myself. On the outside, I appeared to be coping and living with my disability as best I could. But I hadn't given up. Every day I kept thinking of a way to stop something that, for all intents and purposes, seemed to be unavoidable no matter what I did. I kept everything related to this issue bottled up inside my head. That was the only place I was sure that they couldn't look into and see what I was planning. Even though I spent most of that year thinking of a way to keep it from happening again, I want to make it clear that I didn't have a grand scheme going on. I wish that I had. But as you would surely understand, I wasn't exactly in the best of places. Losing body part after body part every single year will do that to you. All of this just to say that the best thing that I came up with was getting on the longest flight available on that particular day. The destination didn't matter to me. I figured that there was no way that someone could get a piece of me while I was up in the air and with nowhere to run off to. It was impossible, no matter how many scenarios I tried to recreate in my head. And if I could spend enough hours up in the air, maybe I could make it. Maybe for once I could go through 1 year without losing a part of me. And maybe the whole thing would finally stop. I didn't even make it inside the plane. Airport security found me passed out in the bathroom, missing my left foot. I gave up entirely after that. How could I not? When I asked for help, they took my tongue. When I tried to fly away, they took my foot, as if to say that I wasn't going anywhere. I didn't see the point of trying to fight it any further. And even if I wanted to pursue some sort of resistance, what could I even attempt to achieve by myself? What could I ever hope to accomplish in the condition that I was in, which only worsened year after year? Nothing. There was nothing left for me to do but accept it. Accept the fact that it was going to happen again, and that I couldn't do anything about it. So last year I didn't do anything extraordinary. Went to the movie theater in the afternoon, had dinner at the fanciest restaurant that I could find without a reservation, and then I went straight home. I didn't stay up pointing a gun at the door, didn't bother with any last-minute thinking that I knew wouldn't get me anywhere. I just went to bed and fell asleep, knowing that I'd wake up the following morning less of a man than I was the day before. I didn't do anything, except leave a handwritten note by my bedside. Why? Was all it said. Why? Was all I needed to know. I figured since I had accepted and stopped trying to fight it, that they would at least humor my request and just tell me why they were doing this to me. Why me? An answer was all I wanted, and it wasn't much to ask for considering everything that had been taken from me already. I wasn't really sure what to expect if they were to leave me an answer, since nothing could possibly justify what had been done to me. I never did anything to anyone that would warrant this kind of vengeance. No crazy people in my life or insane ex-girlfriends. None at all. And if this had been a case of mistaken identity or misdirected revenge, I could never get any of it back. What's done is done. But I still had to know. I needed something to go on, no matter how fucking insane or diluted it might be. I needed to know the reasoning behind this slow process that was progressively erasing my existence from the world. I woke up missing an eye, and all I got was the following response, left on the same sheet of paper. Why not? And so, that brings us to now. I know that there might have been other things that I could have done, or actions that I could have taken. But when they left my gun completely disassembled, or even when they answered my note, I couldn't ask the cops to look for fingerprints or some kind of evidence. But did I think that something would come from it? No. They wouldn't be so methodical and relentless unless they had no reason to believe that they could be caught. I know it's dumb to think like this, but I knew in my gut that it was pointless to dwell on it. I understand that I likely committed some very dumb mistakes early on. But please try to see it from my perspective. I was alone through most of all of these last 6 years. And every time it happened again, I started functioning less and less like a normal person. I had no one to ask for help. And even if I did, my heightened paranoia wouldn't make me believe otherwise. I lived in constant fear and apprehension, afraid that whoever is responsible for this could literally be any person that I came across if I were to step outside. Please understand that things went down the way they did because of a bad place that I was put into, both physically as well as mentally, and please understand that I'm not here to ask for your help. As I've said, I've already made peace with it. And I don't mean to trouble any of you in trying to come up with a scheme or a plan to make this stop once and for all. If you've heard everything up until now, then that's more than enough, and I don't want to take any more of your time. Thank you. Truly. With this, I just want someone to know that I existed. I just want someone to remember that I, too, was someone at some point. I was complete. I was a person. I could share my name, even my mangled face, but even what's left of it can be taken away if they want to. But not these words. You can't take this away from me, and you won't be able to erase me from people's memories. I know it isn't much, and I know that I might not live for long in this capacity. But for now, it's more than enough. I know that whoever's been collecting my body parts over the years will see this. I know they'll be listening to this. Perhaps you'll even leave a comment of sorts, wishing me luck or even offering your help and insight. I know you will. There's only 2 days left until our next date. Maybe you'll finally show yourself to me. Maybe you'll put me out of my misery once and for all. I considered doing it myself plenty of times, but since you've been through all of this trouble already, I figured I might as well wait for you to wrap it up. Wouldn't want to ruin your fun. And I, too, get some form of twisted satisfaction out of it by knowing that you will always have to come back for more. You're not done yet. Are you? And to tell you the truth, I'm actually quite excited for once. This is pretty much the only thing that I have left to look forward to at this point. And who knows? I might as well have a surprise in store for you. Or maybe I don't. See you soon. My great-great-grandmother lived alone up in the mountains at her cabin. Her husband was dead, so she was there all alone. She only had one companion, and that was her loving dog. They both adored each other, and the dog was a great comfort to her. Every night when she went to bed, the dog would lick her hand to let her know that he was there to protect her. One night, she had gone to bed and the dog had licked her hand, like he had done routinely every night ever since her husband had died. But this night it was different. She was woken up in the middle of the night because she heard her dog whimpering. She wanted to comfort him and to let him know that she was there for him. And so she stuck her hand out by the bed and she felt the dog gently lick her hand like always. She figured that it was just cold, and so she went back to sleep. The dog's whimpering had woken her up a second time in the night, so she stuck her hand out. The dog licked it and she went back to sleep. And this happened a third time, and so she stuck her hand out and the dog stopped whimpering and came up and licked her hand. She stayed awake for a few more moments afterward, and she went back to sleep then again. In the morning, she woke up and she stuck her hand out by the bed, but nothing licked her hand. She thought that the dog had already awakened, and so she went to the front room. She rolled over and got out of bed and heard a drip, drip, drip. She thought that this was the sound coming from the kitchen, so she walked over and turned the handles of the sink faucet, but it wasn't the source of the noise. After frustratingly checking the sink and its pipes, she gave up and continued into her bedroom to take a shower. And as she got closer to the bathroom door, it was evident that the sound was coming from within. She opened the door, looking over the bathtub, and gasped in utter horror. There, hanging from the light by his collar, was her own loving companion. His blood was dripping into the bathtub. She screamed and began to cry. Wiping her eyes and sobbing, she turned and looked in the mirror. And then in the mirror, she saw the dog's reflection and writing on the mirror in the dog's blood. With drips and streaks hanging down from each letter were the words, "Humans can lick too." That pale, huh? Jesus, I bet I look like a ghost. Feel like I've bled out 2 gallons. What? No. Not a scratch. Sorry to ramble, it's just that I'm... what's the word for it? Detached. Strange feeling. Seen it enough times in the field. Sort of figured if I was ever going to experience it myself, then I would have experienced it by now. Hell of a thing. I feel like I'm floating outside my body. Just cut the cord and I'd float away. Did you see the crime scene? Don't. Don't look at the pictures. Don't even touch the file. He'll thank me. I can't get my knees to stop rattling. Is that why you're holding on to the coffee like that? I'm shaking the table, aren't I? Hold on a second. Let me back up my chair. There. That's better. We've got to go official now, Hop. Can you confirm for the record that you're waiving your right to an attorney? No. I'm still not interested in an attorney. I mean, yes, I'm waiving my rights. Sorry. And I'm as sound of mind as I'll ever be. Are you sure? Yes. Let the record show that Detective Hobson Millgate, retired, has waived his rights to an attorney. I won't need a lawyer after the DA stops puking and considers taking it public. We're not showing that to the jury. Are you ready to begin? No, but I'll talk anyway. What led you to the crime scene on the night in question? Would you believe that I was planning on taking a fishing trip before this started? Never mind. Hold on, I'm thinking. Hard to organize it all. Never been on this side of the interrogation table before. I guess it started with a reporter. Name of Bammer. She contacted me about a week ago by email and claimed that she knew information on the Driscoll murders. I was the lead investigator. The case had gone unsolved for 20 years. Cold as ice. But frankly, I thought it was all bullshit at first. You know how that can be. Most of the time, it's not even on purpose. Everyone thinks they know something that'll crack the case wide open. Theories are easy when you don't have to check on or go against evidence. The Driscoll murders were a big story around these parts. Lots of interest, lots of press. And over the years, I must have gotten a couple hundred shit theories. When I retired, I handed the investigation over to Detective Carroll. But I didn't want him to be bothered. I know he's busy with the recent gang activity. I figured I'd check it out as a courtesy. I wasn't expecting it to go anywhere. I met her for lunch at Ryer's Cafe. Good-looking blonde gal, professional. So she didn't fit the typical profile of a hoaxer or conspiracy theorist. Not that I put too much faith in the profiles. And again, she might have also been one of those creepy gals that gets off on death. God knows that I've dealt with those too. I still thought that she might be trying to pull my leg, or maybe that she'd been fooled too. But she had a file with her. Looked legit. It contained what appeared to be a conversation by the Driscoll. Well, he wasn't a murderer, was he? I really do wish he had been, you know. It would have been so much better for everyone. Can you please fill us in on the relevant details of the Driscoll case? Let's see, it would have been about 20 years ago now. Thinking of all those years, 20 goddamn years. That's a long time to be... Take your time, Hop. Thanks. The Driscolls were a family of 6 out in the suburbs. Upper middle class. Father was an attorney. Mother ran her own business selling pottery out of the house. 4 children, all high school age and below. Good kids. On a roll. No criminal records to speak of. The oldest son was caught smoking dope in high school once, but nothing besides that. Just the typical stuff that you find when you look into people too closely. They disappeared around October 13th, 1994. No trace was found of the bodies. The mystery, and seeing as how it was right around Halloween, is probably why the press went so crazy. You still see it show up on some of those unsolved mystery shows. A whole family disappeared and no one saw a thing. No one knew where they went. A neighbor lodged a sound complaint, which is how we got involved. There was a neighbor that had lodged a sound complaint, which is how we got involved. There was an alarm going off and they figured that there might be an intruder or something. We dispatched a vehicle, and when no one answered the door, the patrolman went in to investigate. There were obvious signs of a struggle in the youngest daughter's bedroom. The bed had been flipped over and the sheets were torn. The alarm was a carbon monoxide detector. We found elevated concentrations of carbon monoxide on the fabric and on all the bedspreads except for the youngest daughter's. We wouldn't have known to look without the alarm. The neighbor indicated that the alarm had been sounding for over a day, and he'd been unable to get anyone to answer the door during that time. We also found several aluminum canisters and some hoses in the dumpster a few blocks away. At the time, we assumed that the Driscolls had been gassed and disposed of at a different location. Excepting, of course, the daughter who woke up at the end and put up a struggle. Of course, our first thought was that the father did it. We checked it out, but he didn't have any motive. No leads to follow up on. Same with the mother. Surviving family checked out clean too. The father had a few clients who might have had motive, but the means weren't there. He was a divorce lawyer, but not for anybody who would have taken out an entire family without leaving evidence. There was a chemistry teacher who lived about 3 blocks away, and we investigated him for a while because of the canisters, but he alibied out. Same with the dentist who lived nearby. The wife had an online flirtation with some kid out in England, but nothing adulterous, and he wasn't even in the country at the time of the murder. We settled, unhappy on the idea of a random killing. Hardest pieces of shit to catch when there's no pattern like that. We must have sunk tens of thousands of man-hours into this case, chasing down leads. Nothing ever came of it. We did track down the canisters. They were stolen from a laboratory 10 miles away. There was no security footage. We couldn't find any leads on the thief. And after 6 months with no repeat attacks, the investigation went cold. The Driscolls had been knocked out and abducted. Like I said, no one ever found the bodies. Who was to say that they just hadn't ran off? Until, well, I'd rather only talk about that once. What can you tell us about how the confession wound up with Miss Balmer? She'd been following the case for some years, both personally and as a reporter. Like I said, it captured the imagination of a lot of people. Even seemingly normal folks thought that it could have been aliens, ghosts, or demons. Miss Balmer published a retrospective on the murders given the 20-year anniversary. Caused a lot of renewed interest, which happened from time to time. As usual, I declined to comment, citing lack of new evidence. I remember her asking for my quote, though, which is why I accepted the lunch meeting. After publication of the article, Miss Balmer claimed that she had been sent a file. She wished to have me authenticate. The most pertinent part of the file was a confession. I assured Miss Balmer that such false documents are not uncommon, especially on older cases like this, and that I personally heard 24 confessions of the Driscoll murders. She was insistent, and once I felt that she wasn't trying to pull off a hoax or get off on the idea of talking about murder, I agreed to the meeting. She stated that the confession had been mailed to her in the same envelope she showed me when we'd first met over lunch. Can you describe the contents? Old newspaper clippings outlining the progress of my investigation. They seemed appropriately yellowed, so I'd guess that they were from the trophy book of the perpetrator. There were also 6 photos alleging to be the individual members of the Driscoll family, as well as several other photos of the facility where they had been taken. Look at that. My hands won't stop shaking, see? Trying as hard as I can, I just can't make it happen. I'll have to ask the paramedic for a sedative when I'm done with this statement. I don't think I'll be able to sleep otherwise. No, I'm fine for now. I don't want anything to interfere with my recollection for the recording. Just carrying it around in my head is like... Sorry. I'll stay focused. The photos were of the Driscoll family, of course. At the time, I didn't know that. The photos had aged poorly, and they could have been anyone. It is very hard to distinguish features. However, given the elaborate nature of the file, I figured it did warrant a further look. As the confession letter was very brief, it did give an address, and that's the first thing that I noticed. I couldn't locate the address online, which meant that it had to be old. The confession letter said, "Stop printing lies. I never killed anyone. It just took a little while to get them ready for breakfast." And there was no signature. I just remembered something. God damn it. We got sent a breakfast menu a month after the disappearance. Someone had drawn a red circle around a picture of pancakes, and the letter said, "They're not dead. They're getting ready for breakfast." We put it in the junk lead file. God. Detective Milgate, do you need a moment? God. How could I have known? We tried to track down the menu. We could never find out where it came from. It wasn't any place local, and the identifying information had been cut out. I don't know what else I could have done. Dear God. Why did you decide to personally investigate the location mentioned in the letter? Sorry. I wanted to make sure it wasn't a hoax. I still wasn't convinced. I've had 20 years of people sending me fake evidence. I guess maybe the case captured my investigation too. I also figured that one day I'd think of something I'd overlooked and solve the whole thing. It felt unbelievable to have someone dump the answer in my lap. I needed to see with my own 2 eyes. Miss Balmer had pinpointed the location with city records, but neither of us were sure if it was still there. It was an abandoned industrial building. The last time that it had a valid email address was nearly 50 years ago. It might have caved in for all we knew. I think I also wanted to be the one to crack it, whether or not it was dumped in my lap. The case had hung over my head for the last 20 years. Ms. Balmer and I agreed to meet there the following morning. Can you describe the crime scene? Yes. It was an industrial building, as I stated. Approximately 120 feet long by maybe 45 feet wide. It was a wooden structure, and at first the conditions seemed to match the neighboring buildings. However, I noticed the facade had been recently patched in a few locations. Further investigation also revealed that the entrance had been chained and locked. My understanding was that it was used by a sheet metal shop. At least... Excuse me, is there a garbage can? I might vomit. Thank you. Sorry. I thought I was empty. No, I want to get this done with. And then I'm going to want that sedative. I could smell something from inside the building. Very faintly. I figured that would count as probable cause. Not that I needed it, as I was a civilian. But you never forget the way that a corpse smells. They were bad enough that they had the same smell. I hadn't forgotten how to pick a lock, so I let myself in. You know, I do really wish that they had been corpses. I really wish that he had been a serial killer, I really do. Please, say you believe me. I do. Can you describe the interior of the building? I'm trying to focus this through, I really am. I'm sorry. It's just that I'd like to go to sleep after this for a very long time. Is there a paramedic here? Is the sedative ready? Thank goodness. The warehouse had not been as abandoned as we previously were led to believe. The interior had a hallway with 6 rooms. The construction was old but visibly newer than the rest of the building. The walls between each room had been soundproofed. There were no windows to the outside or doorways between the rooms themselves. The only access was through the hallway. I tried to make Miss Balmer leave at that point. You see, the smell was stronger inside. You could feel it, the smell. Like a grit getting stuck in your nose. Like bits of sandpaper all over your skin. The rooms contained presses. Hydraulic presses. 4-foot by 8-foot custom presses. I couldn't figure out what they were at first because they were hovering over what looked like hospital beds. There were IV bags in each room as well as other medical equipment. That's how he kept them alive for so long, of course. I think I might be seeing black spots. Do you need a break? The idea of having to start this again is worse than any idea of finishing it. And please, describe your next course of action. The building was obviously an active crime scene. I had no doubt at this point. I was in the lair of what I believed to be a serial killer. I tried to tell Miss Balmer to leave several times. She refused on the grounds that it would not be right to leave me on my own. There wasn't much time to make out the issue of it. My opinion of her was that she was just a bit nosy, but basically alright, and I didn't think that she'd be a liability if she just stayed out of my way. I had to make a judgment call as to whether or not I should proceed on my own in case the family was somehow, impossibly, still alive and perhaps in danger, or if I should just leave and call for backup. I told my wife where I was going previously, so I knew my absence wouldn't be noted and reported if the worst happened. Neither of us could get cell phone reception. Sorry, I'm rambling. It was then that I heard, not even a gasp. It was like a gasp, but not really. I don't want to describe it any more than that. There was a sound that drew my attention further on. I had to act, and that's all that matters. There were some stairs at the very far end of the warehouse descending into the basement. I told Miss Balmer to remain behind and pulled my service revolver. I had a flashlight on my person as well, and turned it on as I descended into the basement. The basement had been hand-dug, maybe even over the course of the entire 20-year disappearance. I don't know. The floor was dirt, and there was a tunnel that had retreated far back enough that it had to be supported by struts at regular intervals. When my flashlight first illuminated the stack, I wish that they had been dead. I wish he'd been a serial killer. Please, take a moment. After I recovered, my first thought was, thank God they're all dead. I am 64 years old, for Christ's sakes. I'm not a young man who can forget things anymore. When you're a young man, you have the sense that you're invincible and that you're never gonna die. I don't have that to protect me anymore. Look at me whining. When they had that done to them, it's my fault. I should have found them, saved them somehow. I'm sorry, Hob. I've got to ask. Can you describe the scene? Yeah. I can. I didn't know what I was looking at first. Hell, I still don't. It was a stack. Maybe 2 feet thick. From the stink and coloring, it was obviously made of flesh. I thought maybe that he'd hacked them and stacked them into pieces. That would have been bad enough. The first thing that alerted me to the truth was the eyeball. On the top of the stack was a perfectly round eyeball in the middle of a socket that had been distorted to the size of a saucer. And that's when I realized what I was looking at. 20 goddamn years of torture, basically. He had the entire Driscoll family under those presses for 20 years, keeping them alive on an IV drip, increasing the pressure on them so very slowly that their bodies had time to adapt, till they'd been flattened like pancakes. He squished them by about 1/4 inch every year for 20 years. Then he'd pulled them out when they were too broken and wretched to move, without any chance of recovering, and stacked them on top of each other. And I've got no idea what for. And I don't want to know. And I was still thinking, thank God they're all dead. when the one on top started gasping again. What did he say? Nothing at first. It couldn't speak without help. I think it would have been Avery Driscoll. Not that I could tell much about the gender or the age. The hair was blonde where there was hair. The head was a mess of scars. And I think the son of a bitch who did this must have removed parts of their skull. I've got no idea how he got their heads so flat otherwise. Not as flat as the rest of the bodies, but flat. Who the hell knows how their brains handled that? Their lips were punctured by teeth otherwise. After the presses had flattened out their noses, I guess. Avery was 14 when he disappeared. I've stopped shaking. Goddamn weird the way our bodies work, isn't it? What else? There was a machine. A sort of pump. I followed a hose with my flashlight and realized that everyone in the stack was hooked up to the pump. I don't think that they could breathe on their own, you see. Not after a while. There simply wasn't enough volume for their lungs to inflate. There was some sort of opening cut right into each of their chests. There was a switch on the pump. And I don't know why I pressed it. I was in a panic. I wanted to do something. Maybe just some stupid part of me thought that if I switched it on that they would inflate and be okay. I switched it on and increased the volume of air to the topmost hose. And I could hear the pump working harder. Which is when Avery Driscoll started to scream. He begged me to kill him. He said other things too. He didn't make much sense. Kept yelling bane of error over and over again. Something about the family too. Didn't understand it. He was in pain and I'd hoped that he had gone insane several years previously. Oh my God. My thoughts exactly. I didn't know what to do. He wouldn't stop screaming. I believe he was convinced that I was his torturer. A closer look at his eye revealed that it was mostly a mess of white scar tissue. He was as blind as a bat. You know, I spoke with some burn victims once. They told me that they managed to find meaning and purpose again after a while. I don't know how anyone in the Driscoll family could have done that. I stated my name. I told them I was a detective. I told them that I was there to help. I repeated it over and over again, knowing, of course, that there was nothing that anyone anywhere could do to help. Miss Balmer arrived, drawn by the sound. Before she saw the stack, she told me that I had screamed and she'd come to help. But I don't remember having done so. Nevertheless, she arrived. Then she saw the stack and screamed, but I was intent on Avery Driscoll. He was able to hear, and he became lucid for a few moments. It was a strain to understand what he had said, but I'll never be able to forget it. Please kill me. It hurts. I don't want to be a monster. Please kill me and tell my family I died a long time ago. I don't know if they're still looking for me. Don't let them know what happened to me. Please kill me. He could still cry, and he did, although his tear ducts were too deformed for it to be noticeable. I should have forced Miss Balmer to leave. That is the only action in the matter which I regret more than failing to solve the case 20 years ago. Not just for her own sake, but for what she did next. I don't think that she could have wounded them any more deeply if she tried. She took away the last comfort any of them on the stack had had. You see, they had not been able to speak to one another for 20 years. She had gone on to say that That's all of them, isn't it? That's the entire Driscoll family. They're all still alive in there. The whole family. For 20 years, each member of the Driscoll family had been unaware their fellow inmates were the other members of their family. They'd all been holding out hope that their family was okay. All of them dreaming someone out there loved them and was free from suffering. You know what the screams of 6 people tortured over 2 decades, smashed down to the width of 4 inches, sounds like when they're all stacked on top of one another? Sounds like the gates of hell swinging open. I think that's enough, Detective Milgate. Not yet. It was my mistake. I should have tried harder. Maybe that's what they meant, screaming like that. It was my error, so it was my responsibility. And I shot them. Mercy's hard, but I owed it to them. I'm the one that failed to save them. It only took 1 bullet to go all the way through. I emptied my revolver, though, to make sure that they didn't linger, to give them that final piece. It was the only kindness that I had to give them. We left and called for backup after that. Neither Ms. Balmer nor I wished to remain with the bodies. I elected not to follow the crime scene investigators back into the basement. I asked if I could make my statement and leave, and after one of them saw what I had seen, they agreed. Can I have that sedative now? Yes, of course. Thank you. Please show in the paramedic. I'll roll up my sleeve. My wife has diabetes, so I'm well aware of the routine. No, and please make sure that you show the same courtesy available for Miss Balmer. She seemed to have it worse than me, after poor woman couldn't even throw up or cry. Of course. You know where she is now. She told the lead at the crime scene that she was going to go home, but we haven't been able to reach her. Did you try the paper? Which paper? The Daily World. Are you sure? There is no one by the last name of Balmer on the staff with the Daily World.